Okay, so I think everything's working fine. Yeah, Clay, honestly, there's only been like one to two people in this stream for the entire day, so I'm not too worried about it. So, it's whatever, it happens. That being said, today's lecture is kind of repetitive from yesterday, but it describes a little more in depth on like the AP thing. So that being said, I'm just gonna. I was given notes on how to teach this one, so I'm just gonna basically read the notes off word for word. It's just boring, but it's what happens. So let me get that posted on the classroom. Yeah. Okay, it should be posted now. How's it going, Clay and Maya? How's life? And Camden and Kayla? Yeah. What's gotta suck? Me having to do it a certain way? No, it wasn't given to me by like the school. It was given to me by the AP thing. So I have to like. I'm not gonna be able to really read chat very much because it's gonna have to be like. I have to be able to see the notes, but I'm gonna put it on my phone on the side so that I can see it. So, okay, now let's rotate this upwards. Let's put this right here. Nothing happened, Danny. I was just this PowerPoint. I've been using the AP PowerPoints off of the AP website, and this one has notes on how to teach it. So I'm actually gonna try to teach it by the notes, so that it's as accurate as possible. I don't have to do it, and if there's stuff that I'm like that doesn't make any sense, I'm not going to. But that being said, without it, this PowerPoint is very repetitive compared to yesterday. So let's get started in this. This one might actually sound more like an AP. Okay, let me put you guys. I need to put you guys in the corner of my screen. Ah. Why does it sit there? Okay. So today, what we're gonna be doing? Stop. Is we're gonna be learning about the cultural conflicts going on at the time of the 1920s, which we've already gone over pretty much all of them. But this one's going to be a little more of a brief overview. And then the bubble and the bust of the U.S. economy and what's going to start with that. So let's get started into it now that it is. I don't even know what time it is because I have to cover. Oh, it's 1:03. So let's get straight into it just so you guys don't have to sit here for the whole day. I'm also thinking of just canceling all of your guys' work for tomorrow, purely because um, have not been able to. I mean, I have been able to keep up with it, but I feel like you guys could use a day off, so I might just do that. Unless there's stuff I have to cover, and then we'll see. So let's get started, and we'll get going. So hopefully you guys can see this Life magazine pretty well. So what I want you guys to see is like how are the people portrayed. So as you guys can see here, the women are portrayed as this again that feminine kind of thing. The tight dresses, the lots of skin showing, and the men being all formal and that kind of thing. So it says here, ask the people what the people are doing. Well, I'm gonna answer the questions for you guys just so you guys don't have to be like in the chat. Okay, but so what the people are doing is they're just simply playing instruments. They're having a good time. They don't have to worry about life. They don't have to worry about finances. They don't have to worry about anything. I'm aware you can't see nothing. I'm a dum dum, and I. Whoop, there we go. Woo, okay, so as you guys can see on this Life magazine, now that you can actually see something, I'm dumb. I apologize. Is that the people look like they're having a good time? If you guys want me to go back to this for a second, and we'll go back to this. People look like they're having a good time, and they look like they're going to enjoy the life that they're in. So we have the guys over here nicely dressed. We have the women in the middle playing at the what looks like a guitar, but also looks like a violin at the same time. Oh, oops. Okay. So what you can kind of see here is that this young woman is a flapper. She's kind of in the front and center of it, and between two men who are both playing music, most likely jazz music, since we have a saxophone right here. Now, let me ask you guys, what is this image supposed to represent? Well, it's supposed to be the representation of the modernism and the idea of society and the 1920s culture. And you can see that the people in here are young, they're enjoying jazz, they're enjoying this commercial setting of this life of the 1920s that are there for them. It's also kind of showing the new women, the new idea of that femininity of these women who are being able to reject their traditional identity and reject what it means to be female to begin with. Not saying that they're not trying to be female, but they're rejecting the old form of femininity that is more reserved. So they're going for this more revealing clothing, this bobbed hair, and expressive sexuality, kind of showing off that they are female, that they can show off what they have. Um, and it kind of shows what this society is all about. It shows that they're all about this young, youthful culture, about showing off skin for the women and showing off that men could also be a part of it. Can the phone sit right there and not fall off? Nope. I'm not gonna be able to read chat very much. She looks like she's has a mandolin. Probably. I don't know instruments very well. Let me see if I can move it over here. Okay. Maybe I can keep the chat over there. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that's kind of the new culture of society is men and women are both young, doing whatever they want to do. So now we have the white violence. We have African Americans are determined to achieve citizenship rights after World War One. When we have black veterans coming back from the war, an increase of black migrants into the north led backlash from the whites. That's why we have this white violence. People are going to start lynching the South African Americans, and black men are going to be lynched in uniform. We're going to have people returning from home in their uniforms, still looking like they're from the military, and they're going to be lynched in Rosewood, Florida. In 1921, this is going to lead black residents to kind of arm themselves in mobs against the white people, and they're going to burn. Both African Americans are going to burn white people's houses, and white people are going to burn African American houses. And there's going to be no intervention by police. So police are going to be basically just letting this go by, which is kind of cool how PowerPoint put these handcuffs right there. But the police are just kind of letting this happen and not really worrying about what kind of implications it will have. So now the competition is since there are a large number of blacks and immigrants and whites seeking work at the same time. We've already talked about this, but there's going to be a lot of competition when it comes to who is getting those jobs. And it says here that it recommends I talk about a deadly riot that happened in East St. Louis and in Chicago, and then a rape victim in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is going to lead to another mob of white people killing about 35 or burning 35 blocks of an Oklahoma town in Greenwood, Oklahoma. So it's going to kill several dozen blacks, and blacks are going to keep getting targeted by these white groups and focused on these are the cause of the problems in the United States. So hopefully this note reading isn't too awkward. I'm trying to read it off, but also make it so it actually makes sense. But if you guys get anything from this, know that white people and black people are not getting along. So number one, we have the conflicted legacies of World War One. So World War One, we have the National War Labor Board, which is gonna be this one right here. It's gonna increase workers' expectations of what employers should do for them. This is gonna post-war conditions are gonna change, and workers are gonna start getting frustrated. Excuse me. In 1919, a lot of workers are going to go on strike, and they are going to hire Mexican workers to come work the steel industry instead. So now, instead of having these white men who just came back from war, now we are hiring outside of the United States to refill that employment. Public employees in 1919, which is this one right here, Boston police are going to go on strike in order to form a union. Governor Coolidge is going to fire the entire force that goes on strike and is going to blame it on them supporting an anti-labor and Supreme Court ruling. So unions are going to start being built up, but the governors and the president are going to start cutting them down. So unions are going, although being helped out by these public employees, unions are also being torn apart by the government. So welfare capitalism, I don't know why. It's not working. Okay. Well, for capitalism, Henry Ford and some of the other employees are going to take some responsibility for the health of their workers. This means providing health insurance, old age pension. So if you worked there for a long time until you were old, you got some money. Athletic facilities to keep people active, paid vacations, and hoping that the loyal workforce would put off labor unrest. So instead of forcing these men to work tirelessly day by day, they actually gave them incentives to work in this job and make it better for them so that they would stay and not rise up against them. This covered about 5% of the industrial workforce, so it's not a lot, but Henry Ford's starting to take these steps to keeping his group focused and on the same page. So so now, more conflicted legacies of World War One. The Bolsheviks. We're gonna have again the Bolshevik Revolution and the Red Scare. The Bolshevik Revolution, a fear of Russian Bolsheviks is going to grow in the United States, coinciding with the rising cost of living. So between 1917 and 1919, we're gonna have about an 80% increase of cost of living. Some of the new immigrants were socialists, and the United States Communist Party is going to be small but still growing. Um, yeah, so it says fewer than 70,000 people are going to be part of this Communist Party, but the Bolsheviks are going to find a third international community that is going to make their community even bigger. In 1919, increased fears among Americans thought they would see a revolution in the United States for the same Bolshevik ideals. Obviously, that's not going to happen because we're still capitalistic. For you, Clay. They did it for you. Um, so we're also going to have the Palmer Raids. The Palmer Raids are going to be in April of 1919, so roughly about 100 years ago, 101. 34 mail bombs are going to be sent to government officials in June, and one of the bombs is going to explode outside of one of the people's houses. And the guy who exploded was General A. Mitchell Palmer. He's going to establish an anti-radicalism division in the Justice Department, aka the FBI. He's going to name J. Edgar Hoover to direct it, and in November, raids of the radical organizations are going to begin. In January of 1920, they arrested about 6,000 radicals against the capitalistic ideals of the United States, and the situation is going to be calmed by the summer of 1920. So these raids are going to be pretty helpful when it comes to suppressing that Bolshevik revolution and keeping the United States peaceful. The Sacho, and Vanzetti. In May of 1920, Nicola Sacho, a shoemaker, and Bartholomew Vanzetti is a fish peddler, were arrested in Massachusetts for the murder of two men during a holdup. These self-proclaimed anarchists were convicted and sentenced to death despite lack of evidence and a clear bias of a prosecutor. So we have a court case here where these two guys are put to death because of a situation that was never even proven. So that's these guys kind of play into this because they are seen as anarchists and seen as these revolutionaries against the capitalistic ideas of American society. So hopefully I'm not going too fast with this or too confusing. I think it's working okay. So now women in politics. So we're going to have the Shepherd, and I might be in the way of one of these. Am I? No, I'm good. The Shepherd Towner Federal Maternity and Infancy Act. This is going to be a bunch of progressive women hoping that voting rights would lead to passage of important legislation in the 1920s. Ow. Okay. So this act provided federal money for medical clinics and parental or prenatal education and visiting nurses, so people could actually get information about their pregnancy and their children. This is the first time Congress is going to give money directly to the states to administer social welfare, and critics are going to claim that this is a socialist action. So although this is a good thing for people wanting to have children, they're also going to see it as a socialist movement and trying to make it go away. The Equal Rights Amendment in 1923, we've already talked about this. Alice Paul with the National Women's Party persuading people to join in that. I don't want to talk too much more about that. We've already gone over enough of that. My nose is itchy. Finally, we're going to talk about the National Women's International League for Peace and freedom. Sorry. The International Peace Organization is going to be created in 1919, and Jane Addams was a founding member. She protested imperialism and negative repercussions of militarism, and was widely criticized during the Red Scare. So we have this. All of these women groups are going to be seen as somewhat socialistic, but also kind of progressive when it comes to how society is moving on. So Politics in the 1920s, Republicans and businesses specifically. We have Warren Harding. He is going to be an Ohio senator who promised normalcy, won on a landslide over James Cox, COX, and appointed Herbert Hoover as his Secretary of Commerce. He died of a heart attack in August of 1923 and revealed that he had a bunch of scandals. We've already gone over this yesterday, that a lot of this is kind of review from yesterday, but in a different way. Calvin Coolidge, which is going to be this one up here. This one is Harding. This one is Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge wanted to limit government isolation and wanted to do isolationism. So isolationism is the idea of the United States not getting involved anywhere else, and it wanted tax cuts for businesses, so building businesses up. Republicans did not want to continue most of the progressive measures from the 19 teens and 1910s, and they did not want to enforce antitrust laws. So we have the entire government kind of backing off from businesses, letting them do what they want, exactly what J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller would have wanted 10 years ago. So, how's it going, Sean? I can't really see chat very frequently, so I'm trying my best. So dollar diplomacy in the 1920s and the politics continuing. Okay. So we have foreign affairs. All three Republican presidents wanted a private bank to make loans to foreigners, hoping that would stimulate the U.S. economy by increasing demand for products. The banks wanted the government to ensure that loans would be paid back, even by unstable governments. Banks also gave loans with conditions such as oversight by bank commissions and military force by the United States. So if we didn't pay ourselves back, we would come in with military. The United States Marine occupation of Nicaragua was a good example of this, and the Dominican Republic and Haiti, because we decided to, after, as a part of our forced repayment, we saw these lands as our possessions, and we went in with military force. On the defensive side, critics are going to denounce this loan giving, and guarantee that military intervention as dollar diplomacy. If you guys remember back to Taft and that dollar diplomacy about how the United States government should spread their economy throughout the world. African Americans are going to criticize American involvement in Haiti, and WILPF visitors are going to Haiti and claim that United States soldiers are exploiting the Haitian women. This is going to call for more isolationism, and it's going to force the presidents to defend these foreign relationships. So basically, the presidents go a little too far when it comes to getting involved in Haiti, and then people start criticizing them, and they have to back off. Continuing. Prohibition. We start in the middle. Rural and native-born Protestants wanted prohibition. This is going to be aided by calls that drinking German beer was unpatriotic during World War I, and the 18th Amendment is going to be passed in 1917 and ratified by 1920, prohibiting manufacturing, sale, and transportation of intoxicating liquors. Beer, pretty much any kind of alcohol. Evolution in the schools. State and local school boards are going to have some areas wanted to mandate school curricula based on biblical teachings. Tennessee's going to take it above and beyond. We already went over this with the Scopes trial. Outlawing the teaching of any theory that did not uphold the biblical teachings and the central existence of humans. The ACL, or the ACLU, sorry, the American Civil Liberties Union, is going to intervene on John Scopes, and is going to get him out of jail after the Scopes trial. You guys did that if you guys were here for the Scopes trial thing. So, culture wars, nativism. Going to spread pretty quickly. Fear about unrestricted immigration by native-born Protestants who believe them to be the cause of problems in the United States. We don't want immigrants anymore. Catholics and Jews are targeted as a part of this hostility. Coolidge is going to say America must be kept American. Doesn't really add much because it's Coolidge. Arguments. This is going to argue that immigrants undermined Christianity and imported anarchism and socialism and the nation's in the nation. Coolidge is going to pass the National Origins Act, used in around, or it was redone in 1924 as it was done in 1890, and the census is going to determine how many people could enter from individual nations around the world. Why can't I scroll? Continuing on with the Klan, the KKK is going to make a film called Birth of a Nation, and the KKK is going to grow because a lot of what is seen in that. They're going to be targeting Jews and Catholics. They're going to run for political offices, and they're going to win. So we're going to have a lot of racist people winning offices in different states, including Colorado, and there's going to be about 3 million people joining the KKK at its height in around 1928. In the election of 1928, Catholic Governor Al Smith of New York is going to run against Herbert Hoover, and the secretary is going to have this idea of no governor can kiss the papal ring and get within a gunshot of the White House. Hoover's going to win 58% with about 444 electoral college votes. So here's a cool little map for you guys to see. The blue dots are all of the ones where we elected a governor that is a support of the Klan. So as you can see, we have Maine up here, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Kansas, Colorado, Oregon, and California all had governors who were in support of the Ku Klux Klan. All of these little green triangles are people where our senators, so usually you get 2 senators per state. In Oregon, they had 1 senator that was in support of the Klan. Colorado, both of ours were in support of the Klan. Texas had 1. Oklahoma had 2. Iowa had 1. Indiana had 3. Ohio had 1. Kentucky had 1. Tennessee had 1. So you guys can see that the Klan is still relevant. The Klan is still spreading out quite significantly, and that it is prominent in that day's society. Here is a fancy little wedding of the KKK. So we have this guy right here getting married to this girl over here, and this is what their weddings would have looked like. Just putting my opinion out there, that's one wedding I would not want to go to. I'm gonna leave it at that. So, okay. Here we have a map of the election of 1928. So as you guys can see here in this nice greenish yellow color, Herbert Hoover is going to have the majority of the states, and he's going to have the popular vote. Alfred E. Smith is going to be down here with a small little vote. Obviously, Herbert Hoover is going to win. Intellectual modernism, we're going to have more black artists and writers like Langston Hughes, Claude McKay, and Gene Toomer, and they're going to start publishing more and more books and short stories. Jazz, much like the song that's going on behind me, is going to be the most visible piece of Harlem culture for most Americans. It's going to start in New Orleans before World War I and be a combination of blues, ragtime, and other musical forms. Famously, Louis Armstrong is going to be a star. He's going to help spread the idea of listening to jazz over the radio and help grow nationwide popularity throughout the 1920s. Marcus Garvey and the UNIA is the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Is going to form in the 1920s in Harlem, which is in New York. And Garvey is going to be born in Jamaica, and he's going to advocate for black separatism. He's going to claim to have about 4 million followers and publish a book called The Negro World. And the goal is to try to bring a steamship company and bring blacks back to Africa, so that Africans could have their dignity and have their origins back. There's going to be a bunch of them. Garvey's going to be imprisoned for mail fraud, and he's going to be deported back to Jamaica in 1925. And he's going to become the symbol of American modernism. Okay, so this is just kind of a picture of African Americans doing what white Americans do. Hopefully you guys see the comparison between that picture on that Life magazine to this one. So it has me ask you guys some questions. Obviously I can't really ask you guys questions very easily, but it says, based on this image, what we can learn about the experience of African Americans living in the North and after World War I differed from those who remained in the South. Obviously we have people who are in the South are a little more agricultural. They have a little slower society, while people in the North, they're listening to this jazz stuff like you guys are, and they're enjoying what life has to offer. So the image also shows black people who have assimilated into the white culture to some degree, and that they're wearing 1920s clothes and sporting hairstyles of the era. But they're also participating in their own form of urban culture with the type of music that they're listening to and trying to portray their culture as well. So, the Lost Generation. Post-World War I, the voices proclaimed growing dissent. Gertrude Stein is going to be called those who survived the war the Lost Generation. A lot of people are part of that. And they're going to be criticized as part of this false idea of what Americans stood for. So Ernest Hemingway writes a book called A Farewell to Arms in 1929, which is about World War I and these Lost Generation people. The dark side of this is the examinations of the dark side of the human beings. Eugene O'Neill is going to write Desire Under the Elms and The Emperor Jones. Sinclair is going to criticize conformity in The Babbitt, and Lewis is going to be the first American to win a Nobel Peace Prize for literature. F. Scott Fitzgerald is also going to write The Great Gatsby, and is going to be criticized for the pursuit of pleasure and wealth. So we have all of these dark stories and dark books being made about what's going on in society. If I can find a way for you guys to watch The Great Gatsby, I will do it. You guys, I think you guys will love it. That might be your guys' homework for tomorrow. Um, from boom to bust, we have that corporate monopolies are still around in this time period. By the 1920s, corporations were the major form of business in the United States, and a few major producers were at the top of the markets, aka it's called an oligopoly. Oligopoly, some few groups. Mergers between banks made Wall Street the financial center of the United States, and after World War I, inflation was followed up by 2 years of recession with 10% unemployment between 1922 and 1929. And the national income of the United States is going to grow. The languishing industries, despite the boom in the United States, the economy had a weak agricultural sector due to falling prices. Coal and textile industries languished for similar reasons, and rural Americans did not benefit from the prosperity that everyone else did. That being said, the automobile was also part of this as well. So with the automobile, we have this consumer culture. The automobile was a mass production that led to Americans spending $2.58 billion in 1929 on automobiles. Other industries were stimulated. This means steel, petroleum, chemicals, rubbers, glass, and the suburbs started to grow, and shopping centers were developing along with this. This hurt the railroad industry, obviously, because you don't have to follow a railroad. You can just drive with your car and change the way people spent their leisure time. Hollywood by 1910 is going to be a movie making industry that was growing in California on cheap land. That land around Hollywood is not good land for farming, not good land for anything else, so they're going to move there. Young people are going to follow the fashions of the movie actors and actresses, including flapper Clara Bow. Flappers are going to be represented in the social area as a sexual emancipation for women. So women could pull out their sexuality by dressing like this flapper, wearing tight dresses, revealing a lot of skin, specifically the shoulders and on the sides, and showing that they are still feminine and still very fancy looking. So here we have some cars, again, showing that they can just drive up to the beach with their cars and that kind of thing, and that they could go wherever they wanted with their cars and enjoy life. Here we have Charlie Chaplin. Again, that outfit that he's wearing is going to be very common from the time period, and then one of his other actors with him as well. So Charlie Chaplin's going to be very famous in Hollywood and in film, and it's going to be one of the first films when it comes to film history. Um, so coming of the Great Depression, this is where we're going to get to either tomorrow or next week. The number one causes is the lending of money. So we're going to have about $7 billion per year in 1927 is going to be lended to people buying things. We're going to have a drop in consumer spending as credit became more difficult to get. People don't have the money to go buy with their credit. The global economic problems, adherence to the gold standard. So people are still following the gold standard. It's not going to last for very long, which the British and Germans had abandoned with some positive results in 1931. So we're still sticking on that gold standard to regulate our money. It's not going to work too well until FDR comes in and fixes it all, but it's going to be kind of the cause of this Great Depression. Some of the effects. During the first 4 years of the Great Depression, industrial production fell 37%, construction fell 78%, and by 1932, unemployment had reached 24% of the United States. If you guys are not aware of it today, as of today in 2020, there's about 6.6 million people unemployed because of this virus. Americans are going to cut back dramatically, and falling demand deepened the crisis. Banks are going to fail, and desperate people are going to turn to private charity for aid. Couples are going to delay marriage, birth rates are going to fall to a historic low, and African Americans are going to be affected more than white people, obviously because they don't have money to begin with. Finally, this is the last slide. I'm doing actually really good on time. I'm very impressed with myself. This is going to be the last slide. This is the percentage of unemployment over time. As you guys can see, right after World War I, there's quite a bit. Then it goes down. Then it's going to go back up again after that World War I recession. And then it's going to go back down. These are the roaring 20s. Everything is fine. Everything's happy. And then around 1921, 1929, 1930, everything is going to tank. And it's not only called the Great Depression because of an economic depression, it's also called the Great Depression based on the idea that you don't have money, you can't go buy things, you're going to be pretty depressed as well. Much like a lot of you guys tend to be, or so I've come to find out. So, that's it for today. Tomorrow or maybe Monday, depends if I give you guys tomorrow off or not. We will be getting into the New Deal and FDR, and then we will do World War II after that. So next week will be the last day of lectures and stuff, and then we'll have about a week and a half to do some test prep and stuff. Let me show you guys where your presentation or your work is for the day, and then you guys will be able to do that. So for some reason my Google Docs doesn't like to move. There we all are. So if you guys look on April 9th, Thursday, more 1920s, but really it's the same thing. Here's the slides. All you have to do is write down notes about what you heard today. Write it on this document right here. Should be pretty self-explanatory. Shouldn't take you guys more than 5 or 10 minutes. So I've gone over my time, so I'm gonna let you guys go. Have a wonderful day. Make good choices. Be nice to each other. Make sure you guys are still getting outside, doing things so that you guys aren't stuck inside all day. Otherwise, I'm gonna end with the song, and I'll see you guys later.